The airport was loud, filled with people rushing, announcements echoing, and suitcase wheels rolling across the floor. But for 12-year-old Zion, it felt like the world had slowed down. He held tightly to his mother's hand, not because he was scared of the crowd, but because of where they were going. After 5 years, Zion was finally going to see his father. His mother had tears in her eyes when they passed the final security check. She wiped them quickly, not wanting Zion to worry. "You excited?" she asked, forcing a smile. Zion nodded. "Yes, Mama. I've waited so long." His father worked overseas, flying between cities, fixing plane systems, and training engineers. Work kept him away. Zion understood that. But that didn't stop him from missing his father every single day. Now, they were going to visit him for the summer. It was all Zion had talked about for weeks. As they boarded the plane, Zion looked at everything with wonder. The seats, the windows, the blinking signs, it all fascinated him. He had always loved airplanes. At home, he played flight simulator games, watched plane documentaries, and even built model aircraft with his father on video calls. This plane was huge. It had 2 aisles, hundreds of seats, and large wings that seemed to stretch forever. Zion and his mother sat near the middle. She took the window seat so he could sit closer to the aisle and see everything happening. A friendly flight attendant greeted them with a warm smile and handed Zion a small bag with coloring books and stickers. He accepted it, but didn't open. He was too busy watching the other passengers board. There was an old man with a cane, a group of teenagers laughing loudly, a young couple with a baby, and even a soldier in uniform. Everyone had their own story, their own destination. Zion noticed a young man in a pilot's uniform walking past. He looked confident, calm. Zion stared at him as he entered the cockpit, the door closing behind him. "Someday," Zion whispered to himself. The plane doors closed. The captain's voice came over the speaker, deep and steady. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. We are ready for takeoff. Flight time will be approximately 6 hours. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight." The engines roared to life. Zion felt the vibration beneath his feet. As the plane began to move, he grabbed his mother's hand. Not because he was afraid, but because he wanted to feel every second of this moment. The takeoff was smooth. The plane tilted upward, gaining speed, climbing into the sky. The city below turned into a sea of lights. Zion looked out the window, amazed. He was flying, really flying. Once the seatbelt sign turned off, passengers relaxed. Some took out books, others napped. Flight attendants moved down the aisles with snacks and drinks. Zion took a juice and stared at the screen in front of him. He didn't play games or watch a movie. Instead, he opened the flight map and watched the little plane icon move across it. Everything seemed perfect, until a WASN single quotes T. About 2 hours into the flight. The plane suddenly shook. Not a small shake, but a hard jolt that made drinks spill and people gasp. The lights flickered for a second, then steadied. "What was that?" Zion asked, sitting up straight. His mother looked around nervously. "Turbulence, maybe." A flight attendant came on the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. We are experiencing some unexpected turbulence." Passengers did as told. The plane shook again, this time longer. Zion gripped the armrest. He looked toward the cockpit. The door was shut tight. No sound from inside. 10 minutes passed. The turbulence faded, but something felt wrong. There was no update from the captain. Zion looked at the flight attendants. They were whispering to each other. One of them knocked on the cockpit door. No answer. She knocked again, louder. Still no response. The attendant's face changed. Her smile faded. She turned to the other crew member and whispered something that made him rush to the back. Zion felt a chill run down his spine. "Mama," he said quietly. "They're not answering." His mother tried to stay calm. "Maybe they're busy." But Zion had a feeling. A deep, strange feeling in his chest. More time passed. The plane flew on, steady and quiet. But the silence from the cockpit grew louder. The head flight attendant, a woman in her 40s, came forward with a special key. She tried unlocking the cockpit door. Nothing. She knocked hard. "Captain, first officer, please respond." Silence. Now other passengers were noticing. People started murmuring. A man stood up. "What's going on?" The flight attendant turned to the passengers, her face pale. "Please remain seated. We're just having a small technical issue. Everything is under control." But her voice shook. Zion could hear it. She was scared. She stepped aside and pulled out a radio. "Cockpit is not responding. Attempted access failed. Requesting emergency override protocol." Zion's heart raced. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The cockpit wasn't responding. His mind went wild. He thought of all the plane crashes he had read about. The stories where something went wrong and no one knew what to do. His mother held his hand. "Don't worry, we're going to be fine." But she didn't sound sure. A group of passengers stood up, arguing with the crew. Panic began to spread. People wanted answers. "We deserve to know what's going on," one man shouted. The head attendant raised her hands. "Please stay calm. We are contacting ground control now." Zion couldn't sit still. He unbuckled and stood up. His mother tried to stop him, but he walked slowly toward the front, unnoticed among the chaos. He stood near the cockpit door, watching the crew. Another crew member brought oxygen tanks. One attendant slipped one on and tried to open the emergency access panel. Zion's eyes widened. He knew what that meant. He had read about it in his flight books. Emergency cockpit entry was only used in serious cases. Like if both pilots were unconscious, the crew still couldn't get in. Zion stepped forward. Is something wrong with the pilots? The head attendant looked down at him. Go back to your seat, sweetheart. But Zion didn't move. I know about planes. The woman blinked, confused. What? I fly them. On a simulator. I watch tutorials. I know how they work. I've read flight manuals. She stared at him, shocked. You're 12. I can help. There was a long silence, then a loud beep from the overhead system. The autopilot had disconnected. The plane slightly dipped to the left. Passengers screamed. The crew struggled. To keep ordered out, the head attendant whispered something into her headset. We have a child. Says he knows aviation systems. Should we? She paused, listening. Then she turned to Zion. Can you tell me what a yoke is? Zion answered instantly. It's the control stick, like a steering wheel. It controls pitch and roll. She looked stunned. She turned to the others. Get the emergency cockpit access open now. Let him in. He might be our only chance. Zion's mother rushed to the front. No, he's just a child. But Zion looked at her as voice.com mama. Trust me. Tears filled her eyes. She didn't want to let go, but something in his voice made her pause. The panel clicked. The crew opened the emergency hatch above the door. Rare system used only when the main lock fails. Zion climbed up, heart pounding. The plane's hum filled his ears. Everything else went silent. He dropped down inside the cockpit, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Both pilots were slumped over. Oxygen masks hung loose from their faces. Their skin was pale. Their eyes closed. Zion rushed forward. He checked for breath. Weak, but alive. He grabbed the headset. Mayday, Mayday, this is flight. I don't know the number. My name is Zion. I'm in the cockpit. The pilots are unconscious. Please, someone, respond. Double quote static, then a voice. Who is this? Is this a joke? You sound like a kid? Zion took a deep breath. I'm not joking. I'm 12, but I know planes. Please help me. The cockpit lights flickered again. Zion looked at the hundreds of buttons in front of him. He recognized most of them. Autopilot, throttle, altitude, control. This was real. He was flying at 30,000 feet and no one else knew how to save the plane. Zion sat in the captain's seat. His hands were shaking, but his eyes stayed focused on the screens. All the lights, switches, and controls. This was no simulator. This was real. He could feel the deep hum of the engines, the steady vibration. Under his feet, his heart pounded so loudly it almost drowned out the sounds around him. He pressed the headset tighter to his ears. Mayday, Mayday, this is Zion. The pilots are unconscious. I need help. There was more static. Then finally, a clear voice. Zion, this is Sarah from Air Traffic Control. Where are you right now? Zion looked at the navigation screen. I'm over the ocean. Altitude is 30,000 feet, heading south. Autopilot disconnected a few minutes ago. Okay, Sarah? Said calm and steady. Do not panic. Can you confirm if you're alone in the cockpit? Yes. The pilots, they're breathing, but they're not waking up. I think it was the oxygen. Their masks fell. All right. Listen to me carefully. You are not alone. We are here with you, Zion. I will guide you every step of the way. Can you find the autopilot switch? Zion scanned the panel and nodded. Yes, I see it. It's off. Let's try turning it back on. Press the AP button on the top center panel. He pressed it. A green light came on. The plane steadied slightly. Good job, Sarah said. You just gave the plane back some control. You're doing amazing. Zion didn't reply. His eyes were locked on the altitude number. We're still dropping. That's okay. We'll fix it. First, can you check your speed and altitude? Speed is 490 knots. Altitude is 29,700 feet now. Roger that. I'm checking your current route. Stand by. Zion looked at the unconscious pilots again. Their chests rose and fell slowly. At least they were alive. That gave him hope. The cockpit door suddenly knocked. Zion, it was the head flight attendant. How are you doing, sweetheart? I'm fine, he called back. I'm talking to a controller. Her name's Sarah Good. Just keep breathing. Everyone is counting on you. Zion turned back to the radio. Sarah, are you still there? I'm here. You're doing great. I've located your aircraft. We're going to try and guide you to the nearest airport, but there's a problem. Zion's stomach dropped. What is it? There's turbulence ahead, and you're flying slightly off course. We need to correct that soon, or fuel may not last long enough to reach the closest runway. Zion nodded slowly. Okay, tell me what to do. There was a pause. Before that, Zion, I need to ask. How much do you know about flying planes? Zion took a deep breath. I've flown hundreds of simulator flights. I've studied manuals, watched tutorials, learned checklists. My dad used to test me. He's an aircraft engineer. There was a quiet moment on the other side. Then I believe in you, Sarah said softly. Zion's throat tightened. No one had ever said that to him outside his family, not a stranger, not over radio waves. He didn't have time to cry. He just blinked hard and nodded. Double quotes. All right, Sarah said, her voice strong again. We're going to stabilize your flight. Then we'll talk about your descent path. Look at the horizontal situation indicator. It should show your heading. Tell me what it says. Zion looked at the circular screen. I'm heading to 40. Perfect. We'll need to turn slightly southeast. Rotate the heading dial to 270. He carefully turned the dial. Done. Good. Now let's talk about fuel. Can you check the fuel quantity display? He looked over. Still above half. But I don't know how fast it's burning. We'll keep monitoring it. For now, focus on keeping level. Look at your artificial horizon. Are you centered? Zion squinted. A little to the right. Gently adjust the yoke left. Just a little. He did. The plane steadied. Sarah's voice smiled through the headset. Zion, you're flying a commercial jet right now. His breath caught in his throat. I know, he whispered. Then the intercom in the cockpit crackled. It was the cabin. Zion. This is your mother. Zion froze. Zion, her voice came again, soft, breaking. I'm so proud of you. No matter what happens, I love you. Just come back to me. That's all I ask. Zion blinked away tears. Mama, I'm trying. I know. Baby, I know. He shut off the intercom gently. He couldn't let his emotions take over now. There were 273 people depending on him. He had to keep going. Suddenly, alarms began to ring. Beep, 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 Sarah. Zion shouted. Something's wrong. What do you see? She asked. Quickly. Red light on the right engine gauge. It says engine temperature high. Okay, stay calm. That could be due to airflow change. Let's reduce the throttle slightly. Zion pulled the throttle lever back slow and steady. The alarm stopped. Sarah sighed in relief. Well done. You just saved the engine. Zion breathed hard. His shirt was soaked with sweat now. He didn't notice until that moment. Outside, the sky had changed. It was darker. Clouds gathered around them. Sarah spoke again. Zion, a storm is forming ahead. We may need to change altitude to avoid it. Are you ready? He nodded. Yes. Set your vertical speed dial to minus 500 feet per minute. We'll descend slowly. He did as told. Now adjust your altitude dial to 25,000. Done. The plane began to descend gently. The wind howled louder outside. The plane shuddered slightly. Zayan gripped the controls. Trust the instruments, Sarah said. Don't fight the plane. Just guide it. I'm trying. You're not trying. You're doing it. For a moment, Zion forgot he was just a boy. He wasn't playing a game or dreaming in bed. He was flying. Really flying. In the middle of the sky. In control of a real plane. Then another voice joined the radio. Zion, this is Commander Davis. From Military Air Control. We've been informed of your situation. Zion stiffened. Military, we've scrambled 2 jets to intercept your aircraft. Standard protocol. We just need to monitor you for safety. Am I in trouble? No, son, the man said gently. We just need to be sure no one has taken control of the plane. But after hearing you, you're doing something incredible. Sarah cut in. Zion, I have coordinated with civilian and military control. You have full clearance to continue under my guidance. Zion nodded. Okay, what's next? We're going to prepare for descent into a smaller airport nearby. It's not your original destination, but it's closer and safer. Is the runway long enough? There was a pause. It's short, but enough. Barely. Zion didn't like the sound of that, but he said nothing. He looked down at the pilots again. One of them stirred slightly. Wait, Zion shouted. The captain just moved. Check his pulse again, Sarah said. Zion pressed his fingers to the man's neck, still breathing, but very weak. Okay, keep your focus on the flight. Emergency crews will help them once you land. Zion looked out the front window. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Flashes of lightning lit up the clouds. The storm was catching up. Sarah, he said softly, I'm scared, I know, but do you hear me? You're not alone. I'm right here, and we're going to do this together. Zion closed his eyes for just 1 second. He saw his father, smiling at him, handing him a model plane. One day, you'll fly the real thing. That day had come, and it was nothing like he imagined, but he was still flying. The clouds thickened. Rain streaked across the window. Wind slammed against the plane. Keep your hands steady, Sarah coached. Adjust trim if needed. You're doing great. The cockpit lights flickered again. One screen turned off. System glitch, Zion muttered. I still have backup. Good instincts, Sarah said. Then she spoke quickly. Zion, we need to start your final descent. Turn heading to 2. Begin lowering altitude to 10,000 feet. Zion followed the instructions. Reduce speed to 240 knots. He adjusted the throttle. The plane descended through thick clouds. The city lights below were barely visible. Zion's hands ached from gripping the controls. Prepare for landing checklist, Sarah said. I remember some of it, Zion replied. Flaps, gear, altitude, approach path. Very good. We'll go over it step by step soon. The cockpit door opened slightly. A flight attendant leaned in. How's it going? Zion looked up. We're starting to descend. Mom's praying for you. We all are. Zion looked back at the controls. Tell her I'm coming back. The woman smiled through tears and shut the door gently. The radio crackled again. Zion, Sarah said. Runway in sight, in 15 minutes. We're going to make it. Zion exhaled. 15 more minutes. 15 minutes between life and death. 15 minutes between history and heartbreak. He stared through the storm, hands steady, eyes sharp. He wasn't just a boy anymore. He was a pilot now, and 273 lives were riding on him. Zion's hands gripped the yoke as the plane began its descent. The storm outside howled louder than before. Flashes of lightning lit up the dark sky. Every few seconds, the plane shook, but he held on tight. He was no longer scared of the controls. But what scared him now was time. Sarah, he said into the headset, his voice calm but tired. I can see the city lights now. Good job, Zion. You're almost there, she replied softly. The airport is 40 miles ahead. You'll begin your approach soon. How are you holding up? Zion paused. I'm okay, just tired. You're doing something even grown pilots struggle with, Sarah said. You're strong. Zion didn't answer. He just adjusted his course slightly. The radar showed patches of turbulence ahead. He could hear the wind grow louder through the cockpit windows. He didn't have time to be tired. Not yet. Behind the cockpit door, passengers were completely silent. Many had been crying earlier. Now they were just waiting, each person in quiet prayer, hoping the boy in the cockpit could do the impossible. In row 14, Zion's mother sat frozen. Her hands clutched the seat in front of her. A stranger beside her tried to offer water, but she didn't respond. Her son was flying a plane. No words could comfort her now. Zion's mind started drifting. He remembered the night. His father taught him how planes turned in the sky. You don't force them, his father had said. You guide them gently, like holding a bird. Zion smiled a little. Like a bird, he whispered. The radio crackled again. Zion, we're going to begin your final approach in about 10 minutes. But first, we need to lower your altitude to 3,000 feet. Set your vertical speed to minus 1,200. Okay, he said, turning the knob. The plane slowly descended. Through the clouds, the runway lights flickered in the far distance. It looked small, very small. Sarah, are you sure this runway is long enough? He asked. A pause. Zion, it's tight. It's shorter than what this aircraft usually lands on. But it's the only option. You'll have to be perfect. Zion nodded. Okay. He looked down at the autopilot panel. The green light was still on. But deep down, he knew he couldn't rely on it forever. Sarah, I want to try landing it by hand. The radio went silent for a moment. That's a big decision, she said finally. Are you sure? Zion nodded. I've practiced landings 1,000 times. I can feel the plane better that way. You trust your instincts. Yes, then I trust you too. He took a deep breath and disengaged autopilot. The light turned off. His hands took full control. The plane dipped slightly. He adjusted the pitch and trimmed the elevators. Slowly, he brought it back to level flight. Sarah's voice came again. Flaps to position 1. Zion reached for the flap lever. Set speed, 220 knots, and reducing. Good. Begin turning left to heading 250. Line up with the runway. He did as told. The lights were clearer now. The storm had moved slightly east, giving him a small window of calm. But wind was still blowing from the side. Crosswind? Zion asked. Yeah, Sarah said. You'll need to angle slightly into it during landing. Can you crab the approach? I can try. Just like your simulator. Zion adjusted. They nosed slightly into the wind. The plane leaned, then straightened. It was working. Flaps to position 2. He set at altitude. She asked. 3,800, and descending. Good gear down. Zion pulled the gear lever. He heard the familiar clunk. 3 green lights lit up on the panel. Landing gear down and locked, he said. Like a real pilot. Sarah smiled on the other end. Beautiful. As the plane got closer, the runway became clearer. Emergency vehicles were waiting near the sides. The lights were brighter now, blinking red and white. This wasn't just a landing. This was a rescue. Zion felt sweat drip from his forehead. His fingers ached, but he stayed focused. Speed, 180 knots, reduced to 150. Begin flare when you cross the threshold. Copy that. The plane passed 2,000 feet. A loud noise filled the cabin, a warning bell. Zion looked at the screen. Winds here. Alert. Sarah's voice turned serious. It's okay. Stay on your path. Don't overreact. You're still stable, he corrected slightly. The plane shook. Altitude, she asked. 1,200 feet. You're doing it. Zion, down below. Firefighters watched in silence. News cameras rolled. Everyone at the airport stood still. The tower couldn't believe it. A 12-year-old was about to land a passenger jet. The passengers clutched their armrests. Zion's mother shut her eyes. The plane approached the runway, 500 feet. He whispered. Sarah's voice was calm. You're right on glide path. Don't dive. Let it float. He pulled back slightly. 300 feet. The lights raced toward him. Flare in 3, 2, 1. Now Zion gently raised the nose. Throttle to idle. He pulled it back. The rear wheels hit the ground. Boom. The plane bounced once. Zion's heart skipped. Then the wheels touched. Down again, hard but solid. Brake. Zion, full brakes. He pressed the pedal controls. Reverse thrust now. He reached for the levers. The engines roared in reverse. The plane slowed. Tires screeched. Smoke rose from the runway. Sarah's voice. You're almost there. Just hold it steady. The plane slowed. Slower. Then finally, it stopped. Completely silence. Then the radio crackled. Zion. You did it. He couldn't breathe. He sat there, hands still on the controls, heart racing. He couldn't move. He didn't know what to say. The cockpit door burst open. A crew member rushed in. He landed it. He really landed it. Zion looked up. Tears filled his eyes. He had done it, the impossible. Zion sat frozen in the captain's seat, his small hands still wrapped tightly around the yoke. The jet had stopped completely, but he couldn't move. Everything was quiet, so quiet. No more alarms, no engine roar, no wind howling through the wings, just silence, and the slow realization that he had actually done it. He had landed a plane, a real plane, with 273 people. On board, his heart was still pounding so hard it hurt. His chest rose and fell quickly. For a moment, he felt like he couldn't breathe. He wasn't even sure this was real. Then someone touched his shoulder. Zion, said a soft voice. It was the head flight attendant. Her face was red from crying. You're safe now. It's over. Zion looked at her, blinking as if waking up from a dream. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. The cockpit door swung wider. More crew rushed in. Emergency lights flashed across the windows. Sirens wailed outside as fire trucks and ambulances surrounded the plane. But the noise didn't matter to Zion. It all felt far away. Someone gently unbuckled his seatbelt. Another person helped him stand. He stumbled a little. You okay? The attendant asked. Zayan nodded slowly. I think so. Come on, she said. Let's get you out. As they helped him through the cockpit door, passengers stared. First in silence, then slowly, one by one, they began to clap. Not loud at first, but growing, rising. Claps turned to cheers. Cries turned into joyful sobs. People stood up from their seats, applauding the boy who had just saved their lives. Zion's legs felt like jelly. He had never been so tired in his life. He wasn't used to this kind of attention. He looked around, embarrassed and overwhelmed. Then he saw her, his mother. She ran down the aisle, pushing past people, her face pale and eyes wide with fear and love. Zion, she cried. He rushed into her arms. She dropped to her knees in the middle of the aisle and hugged him like she would never let go. I thought I lost you, she sobbed. I thought, I'm here, Mama, he whispered. I'm okay. People around them cried too. A man wiped his eyes. A woman held her heart. Even some of the crew had to look away. A few minutes later, the main cabin doors opened. Emergency workers stepped in, helping passengers disembark. Medics rushed into the cockpit to check on the two unconscious pilots. The lead medic gave a thumbs up. They're alive. Weak, but stable. Likely oxygen loss. We'll take them to the hospital now. Zion watched as the pilots were gently carried away on stretchers. The captain's hand twitched. It was a strange feeling. He had taken over for that man, a professional, a real pilot. Now they were both survivors. Outside, flashing lights surrounded. The aircraft reporters had already gathered near the gate. News vans, cameras, drones in the air. The world had found out. They were waiting for him. Zayan was guided down the plane stairs by two crew members, still holding his mother's hand. The moment his feet touched the ground, a roar of applause came from behind the barriers. He looked up, startled. Thousands of people were watching, crying, cheering. Some had banners, some held candles, some even had signs with his name. He couldn't believe it. He felt like he was in a movie. Only this wasn't fiction. This was real. A real boy, a real plane, a real landing. And the world had seen it all. Sarah's voice came back in his headset one last time. Zion, I just want to say thank you. You saved lives today. I'll never forget your voice. You're a hero. Zion's lip trembled. Thank you for helping me. The radio clicked off. He was led into the airport, away from cameras, into a quiet room with medical staff and police officers. They checked him gently, asked him questions, gave him juice and a blanket, but all he wanted was to sleep. His mother sat beside him, brushing his hair back. You were so brave, she whispered. Brave. Zion leaned his head against her shoulder. He didn't reply. He didn't need to. She already knew everything he was feeling. A knock came at the door. An airport security officer entered. There's someone here to see him. Zion sat up slowly. The officer stepped aside, and Zion's jaw dropped. It was his father. He stood there in uniform, his eyes filled with tears. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Baba, Zion whispered. His father nodded. Zayan jumped into his arms. The two held each other tightly, tears streaming down both faces. You did it, his father whispered. I watched the whole thing. My son, you flew a plane. Zion cried harder. I remembered everything you taught me, he said. His father smiled. You remembered more than that. You had the heart to act when everyone else froze. You became more than a pilot, Zion. You became a leader. A few minutes later, a man in a black suit walked in. He introduced himself as a representative from Civil Aviation. We'll need to speak more formally tomorrow, he said. But for now, I want to personally thank you, Zion. You saved hundreds of lives. You stayed calm. You used your knowledge. You showed courage far beyond your age. Zion just nodded. He didn't feel like a hero. He just did what he thought needed to be done. That night, they let him and his family stay in a quiet hotel room near the airport. He took a long shower, changed into fresh clothes, and finally climbed into bed. His mother stayed beside him, watching him sleep. She couldn't close her eyes. Every time she looked at him, she cried again. But this time, they were tears of gratitude. Zayan dreamed of clouds, of soft winds, of holding the yoke again, but not in fear, in peace. The next morning, everything changed. When Zion stepped out of the hotel room, the hallway was packed. Journalists, news crews, airport staff, people holding flowers and gifts. He froze. His father put a hand on his shoulder. They're here for you. A reporter stepped forward. Zion, how does it feel to be the youngest person in history to land a commercial plane? He didn't know what to say. Another asked, did you ever dream something like this could happen? Zion looked down. I just wanted to see my dad, he said quietly. That answer went viral. Social media exploded. Hashtag Captain Zion trended for days. People shared his story across the world. Artists painted him. Pilots saluted him. Kids dressed like him. Letters came from presidents, astronauts, and even celebrities. But Zion stayed quiet through most of it. He didn't want to be famous. He just wanted to feel normal again. Still, the airline invited him for a ceremony. He didn't want to go, but his father gently said, let them honor what you did. You may not want the spotlight, but your courage gave hope to many. So Zion agreed. The next day, the airport held the event. All 273 passengers returned, smiling and grateful. One by one, they hugged him, thanked him, and called him a miracle. A little girl handed him a drawing, a plane in the sky with the words, thank you, hero. Zion smiled for the cameras, but the moment that meant the most was when the airline CEO walked up, holding a pilot's pin. I don't usually give these to kids, he said, but you've earned it. He pinned it to Zion's shirt, and the entire crowd stood up and clapped as the applause echoed. Zion looked at his parents. His mother nodded proudly. His father stood tall and saluted him, and for the first time since that terrifying flight, Zion smiled not in fear, not in shock, but with peace, because he knew now he wasn't just the boy who landed a plane. He was the boy who believed. 2 weeks had passed since the emergency landing, but Zion still woke up sometimes with his hands clenched as if gripping the yoke. In his dreams, the cockpit was dark, the alarms loud, and the sky endless. He'd jolt awake, breathing hard, heart racing. But then he'd look around and realize he was safe. No engines, no radios, just the quiet of his own room and the steady rhythm of his breath. His family had returned home after the media whirlwind. The world had watched him, applauded him, called him a hero. But for Zion, everything still felt unreal. He wasn't a pilot. He was just a boy. He sat quietly at the kitchen table, staring at a bowl of cereal going soggy. His mother watched him from across the room. You're not eating, she said gently. I'm not hungry. You need strength. Zion didn't reply. His father walked in, still in uniform. He had been offered a new job training young pilots. He said no one could inspire them more than his son. He sat beside Zion and handed him a small envelope. This came for you. Zion opened it slowly. It was a letter, handwritten. Dear Zion, I was on the flight you landed. I was sitting in seat 29A. I never got the chance to thank you. I couldn't speak. I was crying too hard. You saved my daughter and me. I'm a single mother, just like yours. That flight was supposed to be our escape from something painful. I never expected a 12-year-old to be our reason for living. You didn't just land a plane. You gave my little girl her future back. Thank you. With love, Elia. Zion blinked. His throat tightened. His mother placed her hand on his. You've changed lives, Zion. You gave people a second chance. I didn't ask for any of this, he whispered. I know, his father said. But sometimes, the moment chooses you, not the other way around. Later that day, a government car arrived outside their home. Zion was nervous. Do I have to go? It's up to you, his father said. Zion looked down at his shoes, then nodded. The car took them to the aviation headquarters. Inside, everything smelled like metal and paper. Men in suits greeted him with firm handshakes and serious faces. Cameras flashed again. Zion didn't smile. He didn't even wave. He just sat down in the meeting room and waited. A woman in uniform stood up and spoke. We've reviewed the black box recordings, the radio communications, and the cockpit data. The conclusion is clear. Without the actions of Zion, this flight would have ended in disaster. The room clapped. Zayan didn't move. She continued while he had no formal training. Zion displayed rare.com, decision-making, and technical knowledge. In honor of that, the Aviation Safety Council is officially awarding him the Civilian Flight Medal of Honor. She walked over and pinned a gold badge on his shirt. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up when it mattered most. After the ceremony, Another officer pulled Zion aside. He handed him a small case. "What's this?" Zion asked. The man smiled. "A simulator license. You're cleared to train on certified school-level flight sims. You earned it." Zion looked up at him. "I don't know if I want to be a pilot anymore." The man nodded, not surprised. "Take your time. Don't let the world decide for you. Just know you're always welcome in the sky." As they drove home, Zion stared out the window. The sky was clear. Planes flew high above. His father spoke. Quietly, "I saw your hands shaking today." Zion nodded. "They haven't stopped since the landing." "You went through something heavy. Don't hold it in." Zion swallowed hard. "I keep thinking, what if I had failed? What if I didn't hear Sarah? What if the plane crashed?" His father didn't rush to answer, then finally said, "That fear? It means you cared. That's not weakness, Zion, that's strength." Zion turned to him. "I wasn't brave." "You were terrified," his father replied, "but you still acted. That's what bravery really is." That night, Zion stood by his bedroom window. The stars blinked above, scattered like tiny runway lights. The city below felt so quiet compared to the skies. He closed his eyes and listened. He imagined the hum of the engines, the steady beep of the instruments, Sarah's voice in his ear. Then something strange happened. He smiled, not out of pride but peace. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. He didn't need to be a hero. He just needed to be Zion. The next morning, he picked up the simulator license from his desk. He looked at it for a long time. Then he opened a laptop and loaded the program. His father walked in and watched from the doorway, practicing. Zion nodded. "Just for fun? You want help?" Zion smiled. "Only if I get to teach you something too." They sat down together. For the first time in weeks, Zion felt like a kid again, not the boy who saved a plane, but the boy who loved the sky. He pulled back the virtual yoke and lifted the plane into the air. It was quiet, simple, safe, and he was in control. The weeks turned into months, and slowly the noise around Zion began to fade. No more interviews. No more flashbulbs in his face. The headlines moved on. The reporters stopped calling. His name slowly slipped out of the news cycle, but what didn't fade were the memories. Zion still thought about the flight every day. Not in full, not always with fear, but in pieces. A button here, a voice there. The silence of the cockpit, the sudden calm after the landing. Those moments lived deep inside him, like soft echoes. He had gone back to school. Everyone treated him like he was different. Some classmates were scared to talk to him. Others wanted to be near him just to say they were friends with the Zion. But Zion didn't want to be known for what had happened. He just wanted to belong again. One day during recess, he sat alone on a bench, reading a book about aircraft systems, not because he wanted to impress anyone, but because it helped him feel normal. He understood planes better than people now. A girl from his class, Amina, walked up quietly and sat next to him. She didn't say anything at first. Then, without looking at him, she said, "I think what you did was really brave." Zion shrugged. "I was just scared." "I think everyone would be," she said. "But not everyone would sit in that chair and do what you did." He looked at her. She smiled. "I know what it's like, my brother." He froze once in a bad moment. He couldn't help. He still hates himself for that. "You didn't freeze." Zion nodded slowly. "I didn't feel brave. I still don't." "Maybe you don't need to," she said. "Maybe being brave isn't a feeling. It's a choice." They sat quietly for a while, just watching the trees sway. Later that day, a letter came for Zion. This time, it wasn't from the government, or reporters, or fans. It was from the pilot, the captain of the flight Zion had landed. Zion stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Dear Zion, I've tried to write this many times, but I didn't know what to say. I still don't. I was supposed to be the one keeping you safe, but when I failed, you stepped up. I reviewed the black box recording. I heard your voice.com, steady, focused. I've trained with pilots 3 times your age who couldn't do what you did. Doctors say I passed out from a sudden loss of oxygen due to a malfunction. If you hadn't entered that cockpit when you did, we would all be gone. You didn't just save a plane, Zion, you saved me. If you're ever ready to return to the skies, I'd like to be your first instructor, and your co-pilot with respect and pride." Captain Refixian read the letter 3 times. He folded it carefully and placed it on his desk. He didn't cry, he just sat quietly, filled with something deeper than pride, something warmer than relief. A strange peace, like a door had been closed gently behind him. That weekend, Zion and his family visited a local airfield. His father had arranged for Zion to meet a few aviation students and trainers, not for a ceremony, not for an interview, just to be around people who loved flying like he did. There were small prop planes parked in a row, people wearing headsets, laughter, smells of oil and fuel. Zion felt more at home there than he had in a long time. A man in his 20s came over and smiled. "You're the kid, right? The one who landed the big jet?" Zion looked down. "Yeah, that was a while ago." The man laughed. "You want to sit in the cockpit of something a little smaller?" Zion smiled. Minutes later, he was in a small Cessna 172, hands on the yoke again, feet on the pedals. The engine hummed beneath him. It wasn't as loud or heavy as the jet, but it still felt like flying. The instructor beside him watched closely. You know your way around this? A little, Zion said. Go ahead, taxi to the line. Zion's hands moved smoothly. It was like second nature now. Later, they let him take off under supervision. He guided the plane into the sky with ease. The wind soft, the horizon clear. It was nothing like the storm he faced that night. This time, the air was calm. This time, he was flying for joy, not survival. When they landed, the instructor shook his hand. You've got something special, kid. Some pilots need years to build this kind of feel for flight. Zion nodded but didn't say much. It wasn't about being special, it was about being ready. That evening, he and his father walked home from the airfield. His father glanced at him. So, do you want to be a pilot now? Zion thought for a moment. I don't know, he said honestly, but I do want to fly again. His father smiled. That's enough. As they reached their building, Zion saw a boy from the neighborhood pointing at him, whispering to his friend. It didn't bother him anymore. He didn't shrink away or hide. He just walked by, calm and steady, like a plane through clouds. Later that night, Zion stood on his balcony. He watched the sky for a long time. A plane blinked in the distance, making its silent path across the stars. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the pin the airline had given him, the one they'd placed on his shirt during the ceremony. He held it tightly, not because it made him proud, but because it reminded him of what he had survived, what he had become, what he had proven to the world, to his family, to himself. He wasn't just the boy who landed a plane. He was the boy who never gave up. 3 months had passed since Zion had taken control of the sky. But even as life slowly returned to normal, something inside him had changed forever. One cold morning, Zion sat on the roof of his building with his sketchbook. He liked to draw planes, now big ones, small ones, some real, some imagined. Today, he was sketching a cargo jet flying over a mountain range. The engines looked strong, but the sky in his drawing was stormy. His mother came up and sat beside him with 2 mugs of hot cocoa. You still think about it, don't you? She asked softly. Zayan nodded. Not always the scary parts. Sometimes, I think about the quiet, the weight of the headset, the way Sarah's voice guided me through. His mother smiled. You found something up there, didn't you? I think it found me. She placed her hand on his shoulder. I'm proud of you, Zion, not just for that day but for everything after. You didn't hide from it. Zion looked down at his drawing. Some days I still feel like I'm up there. Then maybe it's time to go back. He looked at her, surprised. What do you mean? There's a youth flight program opening soon in the city. Captain Rafiq recommended you. They want you to come. Zion blinked. They want me. His mother smiled. Yes, not because of what you did, but because of how you think, how you handle pressure. They believe in you, Zion. And so do I. Zion took a deep breath. That evening, he sat with his father and read the program brochure. It was full of photos, flight simulators, real cockpit lessons, young students learning aerodynamics. The program wasn't easy. It would take discipline, time, and focus. But Zion was used to hard things now. The next day, he walked into the training center. It was quiet, filled with nervous energy. The room smelled like paper, metal, and old carpet, just like the briefing room of a real airport. There were about 20 students, some older, a few around his age. They stared when he entered. They knew everyone knew who he was. Zion didn't. Speak. He just walked to an empty chair and sat down. The instructor, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice, stood in front of the class. Welcome to Junior Flight Academy. Here, you'll learn the science, responsibility, and discipline of flying. There are no shortcuts in this room. You will earn every bit of progress. Understood. The room nodded quietly. Zion nodded too. That day they studied basic navigation, compass headings, wind direction, how to read simple flight charts. Zion absorbed everything. His hand moved fast over the paper. It felt good to be a student again, not someone famous, not someone watched, but someone learning. During the break, a boy named Hamid sat beside him. You really landed that plane, huh? Hamid asked. Zayan didn't look up. I had help. Still, that's crazy. Zion finally looked at him. We were all scared that day. I was just the one closest to the controls. Hamid nodded, impressed. I hope I never have to do something like that. Zion smiled faintly. Me too. Over the next few weeks, Zion trained hard. He studied longer than most, arrived early, stayed late. He practiced on the simulator again and again until the instructors started nodding silently behind his back. But it wasn't just about flying. They taught him about weather conditions, engine systems, emergency protocols, even how to calm panicking passengers. This time, he was learning it all the right way. One afternoon, they had a surprise drill. The instructor spoke. Everyone into the simulator room. No notes, no help. We're testing how you react under pressure. The class rushed in. Zion slid into the pilot's seat of a simulated jet. The screen in front of him lit up blue sky, clouds, and airport towers. Mid-flight scenario, the instructor announced. Sudden wind shift. One engine failure. You must reroute and land safely. Zion's heart thumped hard, but he placed his hands on the controls calmly. This time, it wasn't a real plane. No real passengers, no fear. Just focus. He took a breath, listened to the simulated warning sirens, and began his procedures. Stepbystep.com/clear. Focused. Minutes later. He brought the plane down smoothly, using the side thrusters and manual flaps. The instructor raised an eyebrow. That was textbook perfect. Zion looked up. I had good teachers. She smiled. You're becoming one yourself. That night, Zion's parents surprised him with something special. They had printed and framed a still image from the plane's landing footage the moment the aircraft touched down and skidded safely on the runway. In the corner of the photo, you could just see his small hands on the control. We thought you might want this in your room, his father said. Zion took the frame, touched the glass gently, and whispered, thank you. He hung it above his desk. Not to brag, not to remember the fear, but to remind himself what he was capable of. The next week, a guest speaker visited the academy. Everyone sat up straight when they heard who it was. Sarah, the air traffic controller who had guided Zion during the emergency. Zion's chest tightened when he heard her voice again. The same calm tone, the same steady rhythm that had helped him through the most dangerous moments of his life. She walked to the front of the room and said, some of you may know me, but today, I'm not here as a controller. I'm here to talk about trust, what it means when one person puts everything in your hands. Her eyes found Zion in the crowd. For 30 minutes I spoke to a boy I had never met. I couldn't see his face, I didn't know his name, but I trusted him, and he trusted me. Together, we saved 273 lives. The room was silent. Sarah continued. That's what flying is about. Not just control or knowledge, but connection, focus, and heart. After the talk, she walked over to Zion privately. You've grown, she said with a smile. He smiled too. I'm trying. She reached into her bag and pulled out something smaller keychain with the number 273 engraved on it. For when you need a reminder, she said. Zayan took it slowly. Thank you, Sarah. I never got to say that, not properly. She nodded. You already did when you kept flying. Later that night, Zion held the keychain in one hand and looked out his window. The sky stretched wide and open. He didn't know what his future held. Maybe he'd become a pilot. Maybe not. Maybe he'd teach others, or design aircraft, or simply help someone else the way Sarah helped him. But one thing was sure. He would never forget what the sky had taught him. How to be calm in chaos, how to listen when it matters most, and how to believe in himself, even when everything was falling. It was a quiet Friday afternoon when Zion received the call that would change everything again. He was sitting at his desk, working on a model airplane. The wings kept slipping out of place, and he was getting frustrated. Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a number he didn't recognize. Hello, Zion answered. A deep voice replied, Zion Malik. Yes. Who's this? My name is Mr. Karam. I'm the Director of International Aviation Youth Programs at Falcon Air. I've been following your journey. Zion sat up straighter. Oh, okay. I know this is unexpected, but we'd like to invite you to a special youth aviation event in Dubai next month. It's part of a global initiative. The world's top 10 junior cadets will gather to meet, train, and represent their regions. You are nominated. Zion's eyes widened. Me? Why me? Because you've done something rare, Mr. Karam said. You didn't just survive an emergency, you stayed calm, learned from it, and kept growing. We believe you have a future in this field. If you accept, we'll fly you and your parents out in 2 weeks. Zion was speechless. After the call, he ran to his parents, breathless. They want me to go to Dubai for an aviation event. International. They chose me. His father's eyes lit up. Zion, that's incredible. His mother hugged him tightly. You're going places, my boy. Zion didn't sleep much that night. His mind raced with excitement and nerves. What if the others were smarter? What if he didn't belong there? But a quiet voice inside him reminded him, you've already flown through worse. 2 weeks later, Zion stepped off a plane in Dubai with his parents. The airport shimmered with glass and steel. Palm trees lined the roads. His heart raced as they entered the Falcon Air training facility, a massive compound with hangars, simulators, and training centers. 10 students from around the world were there. Some were older, taller, and carried themselves like professionals. Zion felt small again, but he reminded himself, experience doesn't always come with age. They gave him a uniform white shirt, navy pants, and a small wing badge. When he looked in the mirror, he saw more than just a boy. He saw someone becoming something greater. Their first session was tough. The instructors gave each student a simulator challenge. One by one, they flew into a surprise scenario: crosswinds, engine failure, sudden landing instructions. Zion's turn came. He sat down in the high-tech simulator. The screen wrapped around him, showing a digital sky. The test began. Clouds ahead, landing gear jammed, radio silence. Zion took a breath. He remembered Sarah's calm voice. He remembered his instincts. One step at a time. He adjusted speed, kept altitude, used emergency flaps, manually lowered gear, landed on a short virtual runway, rough, but safe. When he finished, the instructors exchanged glances. One of them clapped. The lead trainer walked over. That was impressive. You stayed composed under pressure. Zion simply nodded. I've had practice. Over the next days, Zion made friends. A boy named Leo from Brazil showed him how to use satellite maps better. A girl named Hannah from Kenya shared how to balance fuel load during long flights. They all had stories. Some had flown with their parents. Others had trained since they were small, but none of them had Zion's story. One evening, they sat around a fire pit on the training ground. The stars were out, and someone asked, "What's the scariest moment you've had in the air?" Leo talked about turbulence over the Amazon. Hannah spoke about a bird strike during a landing drill. Then they looked at Zion. He didn't brag. He didn't dramatize. He just told them what happened. The silence in the group was deep when he finished. No one spoke for a few seconds. Then Leo quietly said, "That's not just scary, that's heroic." Zion looked at them. "I didn't feel like a hero." Hannah leaned forward. "That's what makes you one." The next morning, something unexpected happened. A military transport aircraft made an emergency landing at a nearby base. The students weren't involved, but the academy allowed them to listen to the debrief what went wrong, how the crew reacted, that as Zion listened to the real pilots discuss the situation. Something clicked in his mind. He wasn't a visitor anymore. He was part of this world. Later that evening, as part of the final challenge, each student had to give a short presentation about why they wanted to fly. One by one, they stood and spoke. Then it was Zion's turn. He stood in front of the room, heart pounding. "When I was 12, I was a passenger on Flight 702. Halfway through, the cockpit went silent. The pilots were unconscious. The storm was bad. Everyone was scared. I was scared too, but I went in. I sat down. I took the controls. I didn't know everything, but I listened. I focused. I kept flying. I landed that plane not perfectly but safely. Since that day, people ask me if I want to be a pilot. I didn't know at first. I just knew I never wanted to feel helpless again. Now I know. I want to fly. Not for the fame, not for the story, but because flying teaches you who you are when the world goes quiet. It teaches you how to stay steady when things go wrong. It teaches you how to let even if you're afraid. I want to fly because the sky doesn't care how old you are. It only cares if you're ready." The room was silent, then came applause. Loud, genuine. Even the instructors stood. That night, Mr. Karam handed out certificates to all 10 students. But when it came to Zion, he paused. There are moments that change a person forever. Zion didn't just survive his moment, he rose to it. And now, he rises again. Zion took the certificate. His hands didn't shake this time. As he walked off the stage, one of the instructors whispered, "You're going to do great things, Zion." He smiled. He already had, but something told him the greatest part of his journey was still ahead. Zion returned home from Dubai with a new glow in his heart. His neighborhood welcomed him like a hero, but this time, he didn't feel shy about it. He had earned his place. His confidence had grown, but his kindness hadn't changed. He greeted every neighbor, helped his younger cousins fix their broken bicycles, and even volunteered to speak at his school's assembly. That week, his teacher invited him to the front of the auditorium. Hundreds of students sat quietly. Some remembered the news. Others had heard the story from whispers and parents. Zion stood at the mic, looking a little nervous at first. "I'm not here to impress anyone," he began. "I'm just a kid who was on a plane. Something went wrong. I didn't know what to do, but I did something anyway." He paused, taking a breath. Sometimes, we think we need to be experts before we act. But I've learned that courage is just doing what you can when it matters most. Even if your hands are shaken. The students were silent. Then the applause started. Teachers, students, even the janitor who stood near the side door. Everyone clapped for a long time. After that, Zion received dozens of letters from classmates, kids from other schools, and even strangers. Some thanked him for being brave. Others told him how his story gave them hope when they felt afraid. One letter from a girl named Alina stood out. "Dear Zion, I used to be afraid of going to school. I thought I was too weak, too small. But then I watched your story on YouTube, and I saw that being small doesn't mean you're powerless. You made me feel brave. Thank you." Zion held that letter for a long time. That weekend, he and his father went to the airport not to fly, but to meet someone special. Captain Rafik, the very pilot who had passed out on Zion's flight, had reached out to meet him in person. He had been in recovery for months, slowly healing after the medical emergency, that when Zion saw him, he almost didn't recognize him. Captain Rafik looked thinner, but had a kind smile. "Zion," he said, holding out his hand. "You saved my life." Zion shook it, quietly. "You were the one who inspired me to try. I'd seen your flight videos before." Captain Rafik laughed. "Looks like you've become the inspiration now." They sat together in a quiet airport lounge and talked. Rafik told him how the doctors had discovered a rare condition that caused his sudden blackout. It had been treatable, but only because he survived that day, thanks to Zion. "Do you know what they found in the flight data?" Rafik asked with a grin. Zion shook his head. "They found perfect radio response, smooth correction on descent, and most surprising, your breathing pattern stayed stable for 80% of the flight. That's unheard of, even for adult pilots in crisis." Zion blinked. "I didn't even think about breathing. I just listened." Captain Rafik placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, "And that's what saved us." That night, Zion couldn't sleep. Not because he was scared, but because something deep inside him had changed again. He felt responsible. Not just for that one day, but for how he used his story going forward. He couldn't stop thinking about all the kids who felt small, scared, or unsure of themselves. He remembered Alina's letter. He remembered his own trembling hands. So he came up with an idea. The next day, he opened a notebook and wrote 3 words at the top. Project Flightlander. He wrote, a platform to help young kids feel confident in crisis. Not just about planes, but about life. When everything feels out of control, we help them believe they can fly again. With his parents' help, he began a blog and a small YouTube channel. He shared tips on staying calm, breathing exercises, how to manage fear, and even how to talk to adults when you're scared. His voice wasn't perfect. He didn't use fancy words, but that made it more real. To his surprise, the channel grew fast. Kids wrote in with their stories, some about anxiety before exams, others about being bullied, or having panic attacks at school. Zayan responded to each one personally. You're not weak, he wrote to a boy in Mumbai. You're not invisible, he told a girl in Cairo. You're not alone, he reminded a shy teen in London. Soon, older students and even teachers started following the project. One day, Zion received an email from a counselor at a school. In Turkey. Subject emergency drill. Message: Dear Zion, today we had a fire drill. One student, a 10-year-old girl named Selin, began to panic and froze in the hallway. The alarm was loud, and the crowd made it worse. But one boy just stayed with her. He used your breathing video to calm her down and didn't leave her side. Later, when we asked where he learned it, he said, from the boy who landed the plane, just wanted you to know you're still flying. Mrs. Zion read that email 3 times. His mother found him crying softly in his room. Are you okay? She asked. He nodded, wiping his tears. Yes, better than okay. The next week, a local TV station requested an interview. The anchor asked about the emergency landing, but also about Project Flightline. Zayan said, my story isn't just about one flight, it's about what we do after the fear. How we take our fear and turn it into something useful. I think everyone's been scared, but if we can learn to breathe, to ask for help, to focus on what we can control, then that fear doesn't have to break us. It can build us. The video went viral. Schools began using his videos and safety drills. Pilots across the world shared his blog with their families. Airlines invited him to speak at youth events. But Zion never lost his balance. He still helped his neighbor carry groceries, he still played football with his friends in the park, and sometimes he still climbed the roof with his sketchbook and drew planes in the sky. One evening, as he sat under the stars, he whispered to himself, I'm not just flying anymore. I'm helping others take off. His father joined him and asked, are you proud of what you've built? Zion smiled. I think I'm just getting started. A year had passed since the day the cockpit went silent. Zayan was now 13, taller, stronger, a little more sure of himself, but still the same kind boy who once held the controls with shaking hands. His online platform, Project Flight, had grown into something bigger than he ever imagined. Teachers across the world were using it in classrooms. Counselors showed his videos to students going through anxiety. Emergency workers said they shared his breathing technique videos with kids in shelters. One day, while sitting with his mother at breakfast, she handed him a letter with a golden seal. Zayan opened it carefully. To Zion Malik, you are officially invited to speak at the World Youth Resilience Summit in Geneva, Switzerland. Topic: turning fear into focus. He looked up slowly. Is this real? His mother's eyes were already wet. It's more than real, Zion. They chose you to open the summit. That night, Zion lay in bed, wide awake, speak to world leaders in another country, in front of thousands of people. He had faced a cockpit before, but this was different. The fear came back. That same tightness in the chest. The same voice in his head whispering, what if you mess up? What if they laugh? But then another voice quiet whispered back, you were afraid at 30,000 feet, too, and you still flew. Zion whispered to himself, this is just another flight, another kind of sky. 2 months later, Zion stood backstage at the Geneva Convention Center. His suit was neatly pressed, his hands trembled a little, but he had practiced the way he always did, slow breaths, clear mind, eyes forward. The announcer's voice echoed across the grand hall. Please welcome, from Pakistan, the youngest speaker of the summit, Zion Malik. The lights were bright. The room was full of people in suits, translators in booths, and cameras everywhere. Zion stepped onto the stage. He looked small in front of the massive backdrop, but his presence filled the room. He paused at the mic, and then he began. When I was 12, I wasn't trying to become anything special. I was just trying to survive. I was on a flight. The pilots passed out. The weather turned bad. People panicked. And I was scared too, but I didn't freeze. I took the controls. I listened to someone guiding me. I remembered what I'd read. I focused on what I could control, and I kept the plane steady. We landed. Not perfectly, but safely. Since then, people called me brave. Some called me a hero. But I don't think bravery is about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing the right thing anyway. That's why I started Project Flightline, not just for people in the sky but for kids on the ground. Kids who are afraid, kids who feel small, kids who feel like they're crashing inside and don't know how to tell anyone. I wanted to show them, you don't need wings to fly. You need belief and support. And someone who says, you're not alone. Fear doesn't disappear overnight. But when we share our stories, when we help each other, we learn to fly through it. He stopped, looked across the silent room, and smiled gently. Even if your hands shake, even if your heart races, even if the sky is dark, just keep flying. The audience rose to their feet. A full standing ovation, not just applause, respect. That night, after all the handshakes and interviews, Zion sat by a quiet fountain outside the hotel. His translator, a kind woman named Clara, came to sit with him. You speak with the heart of someone much older, she said softly. Zayan shrugged. I just speak the way I'd want someone to speak to me. If I was scared, she smiled, and you've already done more than most people do in a lifetime. Back home, the news of Zion's speech spread fast. Schools played clips of it in morning assemblies. Parents shared it on social media. Newspapers called him the boy who taught the world to breathe. But Zion stayed grounded. He still helped his sister with her homework. He still picked up trash at the park, and he still returned every email from scared kids who wrote things like, my dad yells a lot. I hide in the bathroom and cry. I failed my exams again. I feel useless. People at school laugh at my skin. I don't want to go anymore. Zion didn't try to fix everything, but he replied with warmth, kindness, and something more powerful than advice, hope. One day, he received an unexpected call from Saratha air traffic controller, who helped him that day. Her voice was warm and strong as always. I've been watching you fly. Zion, she said. He smiled. Not flying much lately. More talking. She laughed. Talking is its own kind of flight. You've helped more people than you know. They spoke for almost an hour about airplanes, life, and how sometimes the worst moments bring out the best in us. Before hanging up, Sarah said something that stayed with him. Zion, I may have guided your plane once, but now, you're guiding the world. That night, Zion opened his journal and wrote, even if the sky is silent, even if the storm is loud, even if no one claps, keep flying, because somewhere, someone is learning from your wings. 2 years had passed since that unforgettable flight. Zion was now 14. His voice had changed. His shoulders were broader, but his heart, it was still the same. Project Flightline had grown beyond anything he imagined. It was now a global network of schools, counselors, pilots, and young volunteers, all inspired by one truth. Even a child can take control in a moment of fear. Zion had spoken in over 10 countries. His videos had been translated into 20 languages. One of his short films had even won an award at a youth festival in Japan. But despite all the lights, cameras, and applause, he never forgot how it all started. Not in a studio, not on a stage, but in a silent cockpit at 30,000 feet. With shaking hands and a racing heart, one summer evening he stood at the edge of the airstrip near his hometown. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft orange and purple. A private aircraft sat quietly on the runway. A familiar voice walked up behind him. You ready to take off, Captain? It was Captain Rafik. After months of rehabilitation, he had returned to flying, and today, he had a surprise for Zion. This plane is ours for the evening, he said, smiling, and I want you in the co-pilot seat. Zion's eyes widened. Are you serious? Captain Rafik nodded. You've already flown once with your heart. Today, you fly with your hands. As they entered the cockpit, Zion ran his fingers over the familiar controls, the same ones he had once touched in fear. But today, he touched them with calm, trained confidence. Rafik took the captain's seat. Zion the co-pilot. They taxied slowly down the runway. Zion's heartbeat rose, but not in fear this time. This time, it was joy. Rafiq gave the signal. The engine roared. The plane began to lift. As the ground faded beneath them, Zion looked out the window. Cities looked like stars. Roads became threads. Everything looked small, except his dream. They leveled out at cruising altitude. Rafik looked over. Your turn, he said. Cayan placed his hands on the controls. It felt like déjà vu, but it also felt brand new, smooth, focused, peaceful. As he guided the plane gently across the evening sky, he smiled to himself. He remembered the fear, the doubt, the voices, the trembling, and he also remembered the voice that guided him, the stranger who believed in him when he barely believed in himself. Now he was that voice for others. They flew for nearly an hour. Then, as the stars began to appear, they returned to land. Zion handled the descent with steady breath and quiet confidence. The wheels touched down smoothly. No panic, no rush, just clarity. As they stepped out of the plane, Rafik handed him something small, a keychain, a tiny model of the plane he landed 2 years ago. I had this made for you, he said. You've earned your wings, Zion, not just as a flyer but as a leader. Zion held it tight, but the surprises weren't over. Back home, as he entered the living room, he saw his parents. a camera crew, and a few people in uniforms. One stepped forward. Zion Malik, he said formally, on behalf of the International Aviation Resilience Council and the Global Youth Alliance, we present to you the Aurora Medal for Courage and Compassion. Zion was stunned. This isn't just for landing a plane, the man continued. It's for what you did afterward, for helping thousands of children find strength in their fear, for giving the world a new kind of hope. His mother wiped tears. His father placed a hand over his heart. Zion accepted the medal quietly, not with pride but with purpose. Later that night, alone in his room, he opened his laptop. A new message blinked. From a 9-year-old girl in Brazil, she wrote, "I get scared before school every day. I feel like I can't breathe. My mom says I'm weak, but I watched your story. I saw you were scared too, and I saw how you didn't give up. So tomorrow, I'll try again. I'll try to fly too." Zion replied, "You're already flying. One breath at a time, one step at a time. You've got this. You're not alone." Then he whispered to himself, "I thought that flight was the end of my story, but it was only the beginning." Outside, the stars blinked. A plane crossed the sky, and, somewhere, a scared child was learning how to fly because a boy once took control when no one else could, and he never let go.